G'day everyone, thanks for coming along today. So this is our Studying Psychology Guide for undergraduates thinking about psychology. So if we can jump to the next slide. Just an acknowledgement of country from wherever you're joining us today. Just like to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and just pay and the knowledge that they bring. We'll just jump to the next one. So today we're going to cover why you might study at the University of Tasmania, psychology, why study psychology itself, the career outcomes that you can get from studying psychology, study options that we have. It's not just the bachelor program, but other programs that we might go through, entry requirements to get into it, what student support, what opportunities there are available to you, fees and scholarship, how much it's actually going to cost to go through the course, what support is available to you financially, how to apply and how to enroll and what those steps are going to take, and then a Q&A as well at the end. So if we just go to the next step, as we go through the webinar today, there is a Q&A button down the bottom. If you type your questions in there, they'll come through to us on our end. I'll either reply to them through messaging back, that's available to everyone, or we'll answer the question live. If we don't get to all questions today, which might be the case, all the questions will be answered in a Excel sheet and they'll go out with the recording when we send the recording out to everyone. So if we don't answer your question today, it will be answered, but we just might not have enough time depending on how many questions we get today. Go to the next slide. So why you might want to come to UTAS. So we have great student satisfaction in our course. So for psychology, 82% satisfaction with teaching quality and engagement compared to 80% nationally, so just above that national average, 82% full-time employment for undergraduates and 96% for postgraduates going directly into employment after they study. If you're thinking about studying and you don't know what support you might need, we've got plenty of support here. We'll go through the details there. And then also University of Tasmania sort of prides itself on being the #1 university in the world for climate action, and that's something you'll hear more about if you have anything to do with the university as we go along. So I'll let, on the next slide, Kim and Pete introduce themselves.
So I'm Professor Kimberly Norris, Head of Discipline here in the School of Psychological Sciences, and also the Director of Postgraduate Professional Training Programs in Psychology and Counselling.
Hi, I'm Mr. Peter Trant. I'm a lecturer in the undergraduate psychology program. I'm based in Launceston and I teach into the Launceston and Burnie classes. Okay, so psychology is one of those degrees that is ubiquitous in terms of the skills that it provides and where those skills get used. It's about the way humans behave, which in the way we talk about behavior is not just the way you move your body around, but it's also the way we react internally to the situations we are in. So your thinking, your emotional reactions. And so it covers things like what makes people feel stressed or relaxed when they're at work or at home. It covers the way people solve problems. It covers the way people communicate with others and how can we maximize the efficiency and the satisfaction people get from their interactions with others. So we end up with people who graduate from psychology end up working in all sorts of different fields. The obvious ones are the allied health kinds of fields, where in one way or another you are dealing with people who in a kind of client relationship where they have either a psychological or some other kind of trauma, physical trauma, that means that they're in the process of basically reinventing themselves or trying to improve themselves. And these are the kind of things where psychology can really help people adjust as their lives change. But also in education, in sport, in business, there are lots of situations where having someone who can understand something about other people's motivations, about how to interact with them in order to not manipulate, but to manage their emotional reactions to what you're doing in order to allow them to interact with you in an effective way and get the most out of whatever it is you're trying to offer them. In the undergraduate psychology course, we cover a range of traditional theories because it's very important. like knowledge in any area, you have to know the basics first. When you understand the basic theories about personality, about clinical practice, about social psychology, about the way groups work, about cognition, about the different kinds of strategies that people use when solving problems and how memory works. And then as you progress through the course, you will find that the topics become more advanced, which in some cases means more basic in terms of research. So in terms of cognition, you get right into structures within the brain, chemicals within the brain. But it also means that you're getting into, yes, now what do you do with that? How does that change a person's capacity to do a particular job, or to see, or to remember? How, yeah. And in your assessments in third and fourth year, a lot of the kind of assessments you'll be writing would be about, well, okay, here's a theory, here's the research about it. How would you use it to solve this social problem or this person's problem, you know, related to this case study? Because within the profession and within academia, this idea of the scientist practitioner, it is the idea that within psychology, we believe that the best way to know what works and what doesn't is through empirical study of the outcomes. And so whenever we're trying to decide what's the best way to help a person, we try and look at the evidence of what's worked in the past in similar situations and what's the emerging ideas about what might work in the future. So even once you graduate, in some way or another, you're feeding data or information back into the research and the theorizing and the production of clinical guidelines.
Absolutely.
Good enough for now.
Yep. And I just, really want to emphasize Peter's point that psychology is so diverse. It's really important to understand that these are skills you all have and you can apply to so many different contexts. It's not just about becoming a psychologist. It's not just about becoming an allied health professional, because as you can imagine, based on what Peter's just shared, these types of skills are so in demand across so many different types of industries, including things like marketing, including things like law, including things like journalism. So understanding how people's brains work and how you can shape their thinking about a particular topic based on the types of information shared and how that information is shared. So we really want to encourage you to understand that, studying psychological science is a pathway to so many different opportunities career-wise. So
Okay.
did you want to lead it in, Peter?
Go on, let's do that. I'll start, you jump in. Okay, so the kind of skills that Kimberly's talking about. So that understanding of the way humans react, there are predictable influences on in people's lives and in their immediate environment that shape the way they behave. And so we'll study some of that. To conduct and analyze research. Do you know, one of the things that does surprise people is that throughout your psychology degree, you will in each year do some statistics and some research design. And this goes back to that idea of the practitioner model. How do we decide what's the best way to solve a problem? We collect, how do we decide what's the best way to measure people's happiness, people's well-being? And one of the things that very often happens with our graduates, which they don't anticipate when they start the course, is it's that ability to take those researched ideas and take them into a workplace, into some kind of professional practice, and use that to analyze what's working and what isn't in that system. All right. Advanced communication skills. It's no good collecting a whole bunch of knowledge if you can't share it. And one of the things that we focus very much on is that at the end of this degree, we're training you not just to talk to other academics, not just to write journal articles, but it's good to be able to do that, but also how do you talk to children? How do you talk to community members? How do you talk to a group of people who are recent humanitarian refugees to Australia? How do you change the way you behave? How do you check that these people are understanding what you have to say? problem solving, critical thinking skills is something that is built into, that we try and structure into every one of our units, so that, as I said earlier with the assessment, we will actually give you assessments where you've got a theory, or you've got a piece of research, or you've got some technique you've learned, and it's about, well, here's a case study. How would you apply it? What would be the problems you might perceive about what would work and not? All right. Ethics. Look, there is a professional code of ethics. There are research codes of ethics. If psychology is about making individuals' lives better, then there are some things we have to be really careful about how we conduct ourselves in order to ensure that the individuals that we work with in clinical practice, the individuals we work with in our educational practice, and the individuals who are participants in our research are better as a result and are respected in that process. I guess you kind of expect it. You're going to learn a bit about mental health. Yeah, it's kind of like, well, yeah, that's what psychology says. But it does mean you need to understand the idea that it's not just about learning about mental illnesses, but that all of us are on a continuum. And some days we are mentally well and functioning at our best. Some days we're kind of all right. And each of us at different times in our lives are going to face crises. So the understanding of the way people with or without mental illness, their mental health varies, and how do we support that? How do we maximize the outcomes? How do we teach people to manage their own mental health? Cultural responsiveness. Look, we live in a multicultural society. Wherever you end up working, in whatever role, you are going to be communicating with, interacting with people whose backgrounds, whatever your background is, are different from yours. How do we communicate with people whose experience of the world, their initial expectations about how we might solve a problem, their ways of address, their etiquette for interactions between a professional and a client are different? How do we check that we are behaving and speaking in a way that maximizes the chances that we are understanding what this person is saying to us, and that they're actually hearing what we're saying to them? Writing. Look, we live in an information age. If it is the case that in any job that you end up working in, because you're university trained, you're going to be the person who's writing the guidelines for how some new policy is going to be instituted. You're the person who's going to be writing reports about an incident that happened at work. You're the person, one way or another, you are going to need to communicate in a written form with other professionals. So we will teach you the different levels and skills for doing that. Kim, anything to add before we jump on?
I think really just emphasising something that you touched on with each one of those descriptors, Peter, which was around, in your psychology degree, you will learn through doing. You will be conducting research. You will be analysing research. You will be practising communication and getting feedback on it. You will be applying your knowledge to solve problems, to critique things that have happened before that will happen in the future. And so it's really about understanding whether you join us on campus, in person for your studies, whether you join us online for your studies, there is a really big emphasis on learning through doing. So it's, the science informs the practice, and then through practice, we apply our knowledge. So it's this ongoing circular application of knowledge, learning through doing, and in doing so, actually coming up with the next series of questions and focus for research and focus for practice. So that's also something I think I'd really like to emphasise, that this is definitely an opportunity for you to get in a supported environment to learn skills and to be able to exit this degree with confidence in your competence around all of these things on this slide.
Hi, Dave. I see a question there about whether you can do partly on campus and partly on. The answer is absolutely yes. So you can, semester by semester, depending on your life circumstances, you can either be on campus or online, but even within a given semester, you can be doing some units online and some units on campus. Yes. And there's always forms to fill out, but it is basically just a matter of filling out forms, letting us know what you're doing. All right. So, yeah, what is the point of doing it? Point of doing a psychology degree? Yes, look, one of the things that becomes clear, particularly for our students who do the 3-year bachelor or the 4-year honours degree and then don't go on to the training to become registered as a psychologist, what ends up happening is you end up selling yourself as a person with a set of skills for understanding how humans behave and for collecting information about that behaviour and for thinking about ways that we might change, modify the environment or the way we talk to people in order to maximise outcomes. So what that means is that there are all kinds of employment sectors that are writing job ads where they're not saying the word psychologist, they're not saying they want a psychology graduate, but the job description is basically a tick list of our course outcomes.
Absolutely. And what I'd probably add to that is, although this is probably not a term you'd come across in those job advertisements that Peter's talking about, is following your degree, you actually will be what's referred to as a psychological scientist. And that is somebody with specific expertise, knowledge around human behaviour, human thought, human emotion, and applying that knowledge to the world around you. So making sure you understand that, again, it's this idea of you will be set up for so many different career paths by understanding that breadth of skills that we covered off in that last slide.
Yeah, look, so there's a bit of a list, isn't so look, I've had students that I have an ongoing relationship with that some of them have gone on to become social workers. I had some that went and ended up working at the Bureau of Statistics. That might not excite many of you, but you know, it does us nerds. I've had people that have gone and worked actually for the banks in their marketing departments. I've had people that have gone and worked with the armed services. We have quite a number of graduates go on and work in a variety of roles with the education industry at different kinds of levels. All kinds of employment services, rehab services, working within the court system as someone assisting people who are trying to navigate legal expertise. Oh, crikey, what would be another couple of quick examples?
We get a lot of people going into working in government and providing advice around policy, and also people working for ASIO as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we've had a couple go and work for customs. Again, about analysing reports and predicting human behaviour and shaping human behaviour. Yes. So all kinds of roles. Yes, look, AI is not going to replace us real soon. I'm not saying never, who knows, but not for the next couple of years at least. And it has been recognised at federal, state, and even at local government levels that we are hideously under-resourced in all kinds of mental health support workers. So as a result of government investment and as a result of private investment, there are predictions for very strong growth in employment over at least the next 3 to 5 years in psychologists, welfare workers, counsellors, the kind of things that this degree would prepare you for. Okay, so why come here do the Bachelor of Psychological Science? Okay, the first thing to say is be aware that if you want to use the word psychologist or practice in that way, and there are some other degrees that we often, and you need to have a qualification from an institute that is accredited to deliver it. There are a number of institutes in Australia that are offering online. I haven't seen a face-to-face one for a while, but there are certainly places offering online qualifications that read really nicely, and they're probably, the content is probably quite good, but they are not accredited, and so it will not get you recognised within the legal systems and could in fact get you in legal trouble, depending on what you tried to call yourself when you graduated. Within Tasmania, we have 3 campuses, so you can do all the way to the end of 3rd year in Hobart, in Launceston, or in Burnie, or fully online. We have at the moment students right across Australia. We tend not to have a particularly large international cohort for a number of cultural reasons. Psychology is one of those things that is fairly culturally specific, but we do have people who, for one reason or another, they're expatriates or they're expecting to come here or whatever, who are studying internationally as well. Yeah, so the areas you'd cover in your undergraduate degree: clinical psychology, which is all about that psychological wellness idea and what are the major forms of treatment or support for that. Neuropsychology, which is more specifically about the function of the brain. But all these things, there's not a clean line between them. Yeah, that they bleed into, maybe that's not the most attractive word. They each informs the other. Neuropsychology, which is specifically about brain and nervous system function. Social psychology, which is about people in their everyday lives and how interacting with small groups of people or interacting in their community, the environment around them, the way their workplace is structured, has an impact on their mental well-being, but also on their ability to think about problems and the way they behave. And developmental psychology is very much about the idea that a child is not a small version of a human. Their brain is still developing, and it's not just getting bigger, it is changing the way it functions. A 5-year-old is the vast majority of 5-year-olds are fundamentally unable to understand the world in the way a 15-year-old can. And even a 15-year-old, there are still some subtle developments in their brain going on that means that their understanding of the world is not just a lack of experience, but they have capacities that they have not yet fully developed. Well, I'll get started about the criminal responsibility at the age of 10 in a minute, and then I'll get cranky. But anyway, move on. Next. Yes, so developmental psychology. Yes, and I think we've kind of made this point a couple of times. So because of the kind of things we're studying, the best way to understand them is to, okay, let's talk about a part of the brain and how it works. Now, let's talk about a person who has a degenerative disorder or has had trauma to that area of the brain. What will be the effects on their capacity to see, hear, solve problems, remember? As a quick example. Kimberly?
Absolutely. I probably just emphasise again, Peter, that point you made around, even if you don't know whether you want to work towards becoming a registered psychologist, by enrolling in an APAC or Australian Psychology Accreditation Council, APAC accredited course, it keeps every door open for you. So if you were to do a non-accredited undergraduate degree in psychology, you'd actually have to go back and do a whole new one, which is accredited to progress to honours and then to progress beyond to masters, if that was a chosen pathway. So it's a really good way, by studying that accredited undergraduate sequence, it's a really nice way of keeping all those options open.
Might jump in and just quickly answer Carlia's question. Hi, Carlia. Not in the undergraduate course. In the undergraduate course, we will not let you anywhere near an actual client, no. And there will not be practical placements at the honours level. Depending on your research project, you might collect in a very limited way, have some interaction with members of the public in order to collect data, conduct interviews or surveys, or do some testing on a piece of apparatus. but it's really not till masters that you would actually end up in a room with someone conducting an interview, a therapeutic interview. Yeah.
And just to add to Peter's response there, that's actually due to national law. That's not just the university saying no, that's actually national law around who is and is not allowed to engage in that type of work under the banner of psychology.
Psychology and social work are different but related disciplines. Yes. I'm not going to talk about social work. I would rather we left it to someone from social work to represent their profession. But as you've probably picked up, with psychology, we very much deal with the individual, their understanding of the world, their capacity to solve problems and achieve whatever goals they've set themselves. So even though we will sometimes talk about, like for instance, in social psychology, the individual at work, or in developmental psychology, the individual in a family, it's all about, as a psychologist, your starting point is that individual and their functioning. Psychological therapies, look, is one, and it is important, but look, it's only one part of what we study. Particularly in your undergraduate degree, psychological therapies is a couple of units where you'll learn some theoretical ideas and you'll have a couple of practice goes on some classmates and write some assignments about it. Yeah. Mind you, as a parent, as someone who might have a job in a school, or someone understanding what a psychologist who's working in that area is trying to do is something that will be really helpful to you. But it is the case that psychological interventions are very much about speaking about modifying behaviour. Psychologists don't have the right to prescribe drugs. We are not involved in surgery of any kind. And yes, registered with the Australian. Well, I'll let Kim talk about registration.
Listen, registration is a very complicated landscape, but long story short, to be able to call yourself a psychologist, you have to be registered with the Psychology Board of Australia, and you can only do that if you've gone through undergraduate, then honours, and then one of the master's pathways. And what it is, it's really about protecting the public, protecting the community, to make sure that any work engaged by a psychologist is done in accordance with science. So it's research, evidence-based. It prioritises the client's needs and well-being, and it's a way of both supporting psychologists to perform to their full capacity, but also making sure that the public has an opportunity for support if their needs are not being met in that space. So my advice is, don't overthink registration at undergraduate. You can't register with the psych board until at least masters, but it is an important distinction to understand that we are what's called a registered or restricted pathway, which is why you can't use a title psychologist without being registered with the Psychology Board.
Okay, so who might be suitable for psychology? Look, if you're an inveterate people watcher, if you spend your days wondering about why Great Aunt Batty says the things she does, about even at a political or a social level, why is it that individuals end up making the choices? One of the other areas that we have graduates going into is the criminal area, in terms of crimes and punishment and rehabilitation. If you wonder about things like that, then you are thinking about the things that psychology is interested in, but you're currently thinking about them in an unstructured way. And what we will teach you is how to look for answers to those questions in a structured, scientific, empirical way, as opposed to asking grandma for her advice. Don't ignore your grandma, go visit her tomorrow, but yeah. Okay, yes, so quick overview of the actual degree. As I said, and I've said this before, you can do it on campus, face-to-face in Hobart, Launceston, or Burnie. Having said that, if we do we have anyone there in Burnie? If you are in Burnie, your first year and your second year, all your units you can do face-to-face. At third year, you can do 4 of your 8 units face-to-face. The other 4 you have to do online. But the units you do face-to-face are the ones that count in terms of calculating your grade if you want to progress. So all the things that really count in terms of you progressing, you can do face-to-face in Burnie. And then it's what we call electives, non-core units. So non-core units. We are a semester-based school, so we do semester 1, semester 2. Semester 1 starts in late February. Semester 2 starts in June. We finish up about end of October. Yes. At the moment, and I don't think it's going to change drastically in at least the next couple of years, the way we do most of our education is across a 13-week semester. Each week, you'll be expected to log on online, and there will be what we used to call a lecture, which will consist of some little videos, some written information, some instructions to go and read some bits and pieces in a textbook, or some research articles, or to go to a web page and check out that web page, and some other little activities. And it's expected that's going to take you 2 to 3 hours to do that. And then, not absolutely every week, but sort of 10 to 11 out of the 13 weeks, you will come into class, and on the basis of what you were supposed to have done online that week, we will take a particular skill or a particular idea from that week's content and play with it. Test each other out on it, collect data about it, look at a research report, a government report on an intervention that's supposed to change something, and think about, well, okay, how could we improve that? We did a prac in social psychology last week where we got people to actually look at petitions and talk about, well, which ones are likely to actually be convincing, because that's all about persuasion and information transfer. And so we actually wrote a petition, and I think the one we did in Burnie, I reckon we're going to get some speed bumps on near a roundabout in Burnie. You just wait and see. Anyway. Yes, so you do this combination where you do your individual study and then you come on campus. So even if you're studying on campus, you're not on campus all day, every day. You're probably on campus if you're doing 2 hours per unit of actual in-class activity. You might also go to the library and do some reading. I would recommend it, but yeah. Then interdisciplinary units. The other thing to say about psychology, if you're not sure, in your first year, a full-time student at university will do 4 units per semester, 8 units in a year. In your first year, 2 units per semester, 4 across the year are psychology. And you can do whatever you want for the other 4. Now, maybe you think you're the kind of psychologist who maybe you think this neuro thing and brain function is all about you. So you might want to do some cell biology, some biological chemistry, some of those science-based units, maybe a couple of some of the early units in medicine, which are not about becoming a doctor, but they're about the way the body functions, yeah? Maybe you think you're going to be the kind of psychologist who's going to be working in government. So you might do, and this is actually a pretty common choice, some sociology, where you're looking at ideas about gender or the history of crime and punishment in Australia or something like that. Maybe you think you're going to do art therapy, so you do life drawing. Maybe you think you're going to be working with multicultural communities, so you do Japanese. If you're not sure, first year is a good chance to actually do enough units that you're maintaining that at the end of first year, if it turns out you don't like psychology, you can actually, with a bit of paperwork, change and do a degree in something else because you've done 2, 3, 4 units in something else. Second year, kind of the same. It's 4 and 4. But by third year, you're just all 8 units of psychology. All right. But what that does mean is by the time you get to the end of your 3-year degree in psychology, you could have 4 or 6 units in human resource management, in sociology, in some kind of applied science that you could combine that might have an influence on the kind of job that you're then applying for when you leave. Commonwealth supported, yes, you can get, so you can do these things on our study. And certainly for the first 3 years, you can either start in end of February in semester 1, or you can start in July, August at the start of semester 2. That changes when you get to honours, and I would also say, if you can, it's neater, it's easier if you start in February, March, but life doesn't always work that way, and you can work your way around it. We'll support you to work your way around it. Case, I work full time. How many units per semester would you recommend? Oh, Kate, there are so many variables in that question. I don't know how long it is since you did some kind of study, how the kind of work you do, whether it's the kind of work where you actually practice some of the skills that would be useful at university anyway. I don't know. Do you have 4 kids and a sick kitten at home? I don't know about your life circumstances. What I would say is that for each unit that you enroll in, we're expecting you to do about 8 hours a week. So 4 units is a full-time job. 2 units is a part-time job, yeah? So that's probably the best way to answer, and then you work out how that fits for you. I think I'm done. Kim?
No, I think you've done a great job explaining all of that, Pete.
Okay, how do you get in? Look, so if you finished what they call college here in Tasmania, or high school if you're from the mainland, and you have an ATAS score of 65, in you go. And those stay valid for, I can't remember, is it 3 or 2 years? Thank you, Ira. Yes, but then you might have a qualification or study in a TAFE course or some other kind of vet course that is complementary. So if you don't have an ATAR, maybe you've got some other kind of qualification, say, and that would allow you to apply via a process where there'd be some other academic tests, and or you might do a 12-month diploma of university studies first. We'll talk about that in a minute. ATAR and UPP we'll come back to. Graduate entry pathway is, so if you already have a degree and you obtain that degree within the last 10 years, then on the basis of your performance in that degree, you can apply to enter the degree. And depending on what the content of it was and how long ago it was, you might even get some credit for some units. So maybe in your first or second year, you might be able to skip a unit because you've already studied something that is very close to what we will be doing in that unit. And that's a discussion we'd have on a 1-by-1 basis when you applied. Domestic applicants for higher education study. Yes, you can transfer into our Bachelor of Psychology if you have been doing some study either at another university or at UTAS in another course, and we would look at your performance within that course as whether or not you're meeting the entry requirements academically. And again, there'd be this discussion about credit transfer. There is a pathway for people who, for one reason or another, do not have a college graduation score and or have been working so long that it's no longer relevant for applications. Look, as you can see, that it says that includes some questionnaires, some surveys, and some small tests about literacy and things. And that is something that you would do not with the School of Psychology, but with central administration. The student experienced people would be the people that you would interact with. Right, now, ATAR. If you have done UPP, it is your performance in UPP that determines whether you get into a future degree, not your ATAR. So yes, there are people who end up with an ATAR that won't get them into the degree they want. And so the whole point of UPP is to get you some of the skills that you might need to progress. And if you do well in the UPP, in you go, regardless of your ATAR.
And really what all of these requirements are there for is to set you up for success. So if, you know, as Peter was just describing, if you don't happen to meet the standard requirements, there are other pathways. And it's really just making sure that when you do enter the particular, you know, our degree, our undergraduate degree, that you are set up to, you know, perform to your highest level, to succeed. And of course, there's a whole range of student supports once you're within the program to further facilitate that.
I've got another question there. Someone who's 24 and has done, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the NCC Foundation diploma. So I would rather not answer that question. But am I eligible to apply? Well, crikey, ask the question. Send your qualifications, put in an application request with I'm sorry, I'm going to go blank on the name of the part of the organisation. Ira, can you?
Yeah, I suppose it's just the recruitment team, which would be who I'm with. Yes, you can definitely apply. You're eligible to apply. If you're not able to go directly into the Bachelor of Psychology course, there would either be a pathway into it from the UPP or from the Diploma of University Studies in Psychology. So you just build up a little bit of credit and go straight into the psychology from there. So there are pathways in that can move directly into second year if you don't get directly into the bachelor degree. But yes, you are definitely eligible to apply.
Oh, okay. So, Ira, is this more you kind of a slide?
Yeah, I can touch on this. So while you're at university, there's plenty of study support. So a lot of people coming to university don't know if they're going to, they haven't been to school, they've been out of school for a while, they don't actually know how long they're going to be on campus for, or if they need to be on campus. We have study support for every circumstance. So peer-assisted learning sessions, that's someone who's done the unit before, they're still a student, and they'll go through everything with the other students just going through it for the first time. Student advisor is a role similar to my own, but for current students. So they'll essentially help with any administrative details going through the entire degree. We have learning workshops and 24-hour study support. So whenever you have a question, there is always support there available to you. Career guidance, once you're getting towards the tail end of your degree, there's career guidance about how to go through, like what jobs can you apply for, how do you go about doing that, registering for any professional bodies and things like that. That wouldn't be at the end of this degree, but later on. And then what opportunities are there for volunteering or professional accreditation while you're going through the degree as well. We have support there for you as well. And then counselling and wellbeing, if study is becoming overwhelming or if there's any other reason that you need counselling and wellbeing support, that's available through the university as well, and it's available for all students, either in person or online. So that can help with academic support, mental health, or personal concerns as you go through the university, of course.
And I just add to all of those different resources on this particular slide, they're all able to be accessed free of charge. So there's no additional costs associated with any of these. This is part of what you can access once you are an enrolled student at the university.
Fees. So going through each degree costs a different amount because your payments will be based on the units that you study within a degree. So there is a bit of flexibility about which units you study. And so your costs per your degree will differ from person to person. I can say that generally, psychology units will cost roughly $1,000 if they're the ACC psychology units. If they're general psychology units, then they're going to be roughly $1,800. So your degree can go anywhere from roughly $24,000 to roughly $48,000 and anywhere in between that. So psychology is very flexible in some of the units that you do, especially your electives. So your fees will be very dependent on which units you select to do. If you are going through that, there's no need to pay upfront for your studies. There is the opportunity to pay upfront each semester that you go through them. So for instance, if you have a university bill for $4,000 for a semester, If you don't pay that up front, you can defer those costs onto a help loan. So a help loan is interest-free, and you're only forced to pay. You're only obligated to start paying that back once you start earning over a certain threshold. So the threshold is currently $54,000. You're only obligated to pay back your loan with the money that you make over that $54,000. So it does get somewhat complex. If you want to go through the details, feel free to book in a session with me and we can go through all of that. But generally, if you don't want to pay upfront, then yes, you can defer your payments. Scholarships, if you want help paying for your scholarships, or if you need help financially while you're going through university, we have hundreds of scholarships available. So if you need to travel for university, you can get a scholarship for that. Or if you're volunteering in the community, there are heaps of scholarships available for different reasons, from community support. Third parties in the community provide scholarships to students all the time, and there's heaps available for you there. So they'll close on 31st of October. So you do need to get them in. If you're applying for scholarships, you can let us know. We can give you a hand, but they do need to go through. You need to register a scholarships account, and then you apply through there. And it's just as easy as hitting apply on all the ones that are relevant to you. So at the moment, I'm sure we have some year 12s in here, some 24-year-olds, people who've studied before, people who haven't. You can apply now. So you can apply essentially up to the start of the semester. I would encourage you to apply much sooner than that. But you can apply whenever you want going from there. Once you apply, you'll hear back from us, and you'll either receive an offer to study the degree that you want, which would be the Bachelor of Psychology in this case, or you would be offered an alternate pathway in. So if you apply for the Bachelor of Psychology and you don't quite make it with, so if you don't have the ATAR, if you're in year 12, then you can receive an offer for something else that has a lower entry requirement, but will still allow you access to the Bachelor of Psychology upon its completion. So that would either be the UPP or the Diploma of University Studies. So there'll be a pathway provided to you if you don't get the offer that you want. Once you've gotten an offer, for everyone who's not a year 12 student, you can enroll in your units now. So that is the units that you would study in 2025. You can enroll in all of those units now. You can wander onto campus. We'll give you a hand with that. For year 12 students, you can enroll in units once your ATAR comes out, which will be the 18th of December this year. So for any students that want a hand with enrollment, if we go to the next slide, you can see there different dates this year for our Know Your Options event. If you come onto campus on those dates, we will help you with your enrollment. We will set you up for the entire 2025. We'll do your enrollment for the entire year. We'll provide all the details that you need, how to find everything on Milo and all of those details, and we'll go through that information with you. So for year 12 students, Wednesday the 18th is when you'll get your ATAR results back. And yep, great, if you've passed or if you've already got an SRP offer, then you'll be able to enroll in your units there and then as soon as you come out of that. So questions, we do have a question here. My first degree was more than 10 years ago. I imagine that means no advanced standing for prior study. Does graduate entry pathway change anything about the pathway I can take? So no, it doesn't change anything else about the pathway you take. There still may be some units that you will be credited for if you apply for advanced standing. Those would be elective units, and it would still benefit you to go through the advanced standing process, because your units that you've previously done may be able to be credited as elective units. So that can take up to a third of the degree away from you. You might be able to instead finish in 2 years. Pop some questions in the chat if you have any.
There was a question from Samantha, and I clicked on the button to type an answer and it's gone. So I don't know where it went. Samantha, the question is no, psychology only does 2 semesters a year. However, there may be some of your electives that you could do over the summer times, which would spread the load a bit. But no, you can't do 3 semesters and complete your psych degree in less than 3 years.
Yep. How do you book an appointment with myself or someone in my team? When this goes out, there will be a link to our bookings page. You can either book on campus at any of our campuses to talk with someone, either myself or someone in my team, or over the phone, you can book in to have an appointment with one of us. And we'll go through the details of your application or anything like that, and we'll see what's going on. We'll just help out where we can. I'll just give it a minute or two. Oh no, we've got another one. The latest date by which you need, so if you receive an offer, what is the latest dates by which you need to accept your offer? There's no hard set date that you need to accept your offer by, other than classes will be starting on the 24th of February. So in the very worst circumstances, we need you enrolled by the end of your first week. So the end of the week of the 24th of February, that means that you've already missed a week of class, and that is very far from ideal. That is the absolute latest that anyone can ever enroll in classes. So we would hope that you would accept your offer. You can accept your offer, and that means there's no obligation to study. Once you enroll in your classes, then you're saying that you intend to study. And once you get past the census date in week 3, that is when there is a financial obligation to pay. So you can enroll in all of your classes and start them. And if you get 2 weeks in and pull out, there's still no financial payment that you need to make. But I would encourage everyone to accept their offer when they get it, regardless of whether or not they plan to study straight away. Yeah, so no, there's no hard date for accepting an offer, but I would encourage you to do so. How do applications for 4th year honours work? That's more a Kimberly question.
Yeah, it is. So essentially you do, if you are wanting to apply for honours, even if you study your undergraduate degree with us at UTAS, you do need to apply. And the applications open sort of a little past middle of the year of your 3rd year. You submit all your details, and then offers are based purely on academic merit. Fancy way of saying, essentially, there are a limited number of places in honours, and so it will depend on what your final grade is as to whether you'll be made an offer. But what I would say is always apply, because the minimum entry score for honours varies from year to year, depending on how many people actually apply. Because as Peter described earlier, so many different career pathways, so that for some people, honours is not really part of the equation. But for those who are, make that application once the portal opens, about middle of your 3rd year. Then what will automatically happen is we will be able to access your academic transcript. It only counts your 2nd and 3rd year core units. So 1st year is a year to kind of settle in, figure out this whole university thing. And then 2nd and 3rd year is where we're really wanting you to, obviously do your best. And on average, we do recommend that people aim for a distinction average across their core psychology subjects in year 2 and 3 to maximise their chance of being made an offer into honours. Just as a little side note, if you don't get into honours on your first attempt, that doesn't mean that all hope is lost. You're very, very welcome. And again, we encourage you to think about applying again in the future, or you might even take a pathway into one of our postgraduate counselling courses to progress your career that way as well.
Cool. Is it possible to do the honours year online, or is it only offered on campus?
Currently for our university, it is only offered on campus, but it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different to undergraduate in that there will be some weeks where you may not have on-campus activities, particularly in the 2nd semester, because the program has been deliberately designed so that you will have, an intensive day every couple of weeks, for example, to free up more time for your data collection and data analysis. Because one of the most exciting things about honours in psychology is you actually conduct your very own research project on a topic, and you get to see it from, the very beginning right through to the very end. So it's a really, really exciting part of honours, but it is on campus for us.
Actually, Kathy, also I see in your question, you're saying that you're doing it through the Bachelor of Arts online, which you absolutely can do. When we're talking about degree costs and things, if you were doing the Bachelor of Psychological Science instead of a Bachelor of Arts with a psychology major, it would cost you a lot less. And that's because of the federal, it'll cost you about half. And that's a federal government thing, nothing we can do anything about. And the current Labor government has said they might change that, but they haven't changed it yet. And if you're doing the Bachelor of Psychological Science, all those arts units that you might want to do to accompany it, you can still do.
That's
And
a really
cost the same, but your psychology units will cost about half as much.
Yeah. So there's a really hot tip there.
Cool. I think that's it for now. If you do have any questions, you'll receive an email with the recording of this, but also the questions and everything like that everyone's asked. And then it will also have a link to our bookings page if you want to talk more about applications or anything like that. So that's it for now. Thanks for coming along. And if you have any more questions, get in touch.